right, so welcome to the July Putnam Republican Club meeting. Thank you very much for joining us here at the Viking Center at the college. We so appreciate having all of you here. So we're going to start this evening. Miss Rusty, will you lead us in prayer? If everyone please stand, if you can, and join us in prayer.
Oh Lord, we thank you once again. Come together to pray that we can try to help our country come back to you. We also thank you for our representative who represents us very well. We just ask that you would bless Bobby as he gives us information much needed, and bless each one here as we take in what we learn. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. And Jimmy Watts, would you lead us in the pledge?
I will. Good evening. Please join me in the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So this evening we're going to start off by recognizing a few of our honored guests. We have two people who have traveled here to visit us from Clay County. So I'd like to introduce you all to Rhonda Jett. She is the chair of the Clay County GOP, and Scotty Taylor, who's the state committee man from Clay County. So Rhonda They have a wonderful organization up there in Clay County. We traveled up there a few months back when they had a big event, and so enjoyed visiting with them as well. So thank you for being here tonight. We also have with us tonight Charles Overturf, our supervisor of elections. Charles, there you are. Jamie Watts, we just heard from, our mayor of Willaca. We have Phil Leary, who's on the school board here in Putnam County. Phil. We have two county commissioners with us tonight, Paul Adamsack and Leota Wilkinson. Where are you guys? There's Leota. And Paul, okay, behind the crowd. And then we have with us John Browning, the Florida Department of Transportation, and he has a new appointment at the Florida Historical Commission. So John, thank you for being here and being here as well. We certainly appreciate it. We have quite a few visitors here tonight. If you're a visitor here for the first or the second time, would you raise your hand and let us recognize you as a thank you so much for being here. As people came in tonight, I asked, how did you hear? And they either heard through Facebook or they are on our newsletter. So for those of you who don't know, we have a monthly newsletter. David is our editor of the newsletter, and it goes out to close to 8,000 people here in Putnam County receive that newsletter. And so we're pleased to have you all here. It seems like every month we have a few more people who come and join as a result of that newsletter. Also, if we have any new members tonight, if you're a new member tonight, if you'll please raise your hand. I think we had a few people join new tonight. I see 3 hands up. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And as always, the best for last are veterans. If you're a veteran, please let us recognize you by raising your hand or standing. We so appreciate having you with us. So we're going to not delay, but hop right into our program. So Yoma, if you'll come up and introduce our guest speaker tonight. We have Bobby Payne here. Everyone turns out, so we really appreciate having him here. So Yoma, if you'll make the introductions.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for coming. Really a nice crowd tonight. I'd like to introduce our representative. Let me be clear. He is our state representative, Bobby Payne. He is a Plaquemine native and serves District 20, which covers all of Putnam, Southern Clay, North Marion, and parts of West St. Johns County. He was employed by Seminole Electric Cooperative and Inc. for 38 years in numerous management positions and retired in May of 2019. He has graduated from Jacksonville University with a BA and Nova Scotia Southeastern University with an MBA. He's a member of First Baptist Church of Palatka. He has served on numerous boards and committees throughout his life, including affiliations, board member of Putnam County Chamber of Commerce, 25 plus years, past chairman, 2006, and executive committee member of Sunrise Rotary for 30 years, past board member and president, 2000, member of Haven Hospice, Roberts Care Center Capital Fundraising Campaign, 2003 to 2004. He's a current member of a co-chair of the ARC of Putnam County Annual Fundraiser 2015-2016, St. John's River State College Executive Athletic Board, Putnam County United Way Board, 7 years, past treasurer, 3 years, fundraising chair, 2009 and 10, Okay, he's getting a little embarrassed because, this guy is so busy. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our representative officer.
Thank you. That was nice. I do get a little embarrassed by some of these things that are 10, 15 years old. But I will say, Rusty, thank you. I have the good fortune, thank you, David. I have the good fortune at times in the House to be able to say the prayer on the House floor. And Rusty sent me some prayers, and I'll take excerpts of those prayers often and use them. So thank you for that. Thank you for your prayers for our need in Tallahassee. Scotty and Rhonda, thank you for being here. When I first started campaigning back in 2015, one of the first people I contacted was Scotty. Shortly thereafter, I met Rhonda. Scotty, affiliated with the firefighters, certainly helped in the campaign in other counties beyond Putnam. And John, congratulations on being appointed to the Historical Society. Is it hysterical or historical? just want to make sure I get that right. So, good. So what I thought I'd do tonight was I have 3 hours of material that I told Wayne McLean I would try to cover in 30 minutes so that you could all eat. So appreciate the guidance there, Wayne, as usual. And probably the first thing I should do is put on my glasses. So I thought I'd cover with you a little bit of what we've done in the state as far as the budget, run through the budget, where we are with the budget process, talk to you about tax-free holidays. Some of you may remember that 2 years ago I was the Ways and Means Chair for a couple of years and we implemented the largest tax-free holiday package ever in the history of the state. This year we probably have a larger tax-free package, and Representative McLean followed suit, and so we expanded that package to be over $2.7 billion, which is returned your hard-working money back in your pockets. I also want to talk about budget appropriations, those things that we were able to get done in committees this year that we took directly from Putnam County and put in appropriations for, and we brought back quite a bit of money to Putnam County for a lot of needs. I want to talk about broadband briefly, because I know that's been a priority for Putnam County and many of our rural communities for some time. And then I think I'll explain a little bit about my role in the legislature, where I am with the new committee, and then we'll run through some policy bills, because I know you have some questions on policy bills, and then we'll try to wrap it up there. So to start with, we had a budget this year, $116.5 billion. That's the largest budget ever in the history of the state of Florida. And we're able to do that because the revenues and the policies that we've implemented over the last 4 or 5 years have kept Florida free, have kept Florida business friendly, and have kept our tourism rates up. Even through COVID, you saw how the governor has led through a lot of those issues. So that gave us additional revenue, and as a result of that, we get to spend that revenue and return as many dollars as we can back to our citizens to promote things like small businesses, opportunities, and growth in many categories. I'm going to run through a few of the tax-free holidays that we have, just a few of those to give you an idea of what it is. Tax-free wise, we have a permanent sales tax on baby and toddler necessities of $158 million. We also have a permanent sales tax on diapers and incontinent products. So, I can look back at the back and see people like Wayne McLean and know he'll be in line for some of those adult diapers pretty soon. Wayne, I'll be right there with you, so don't feel bad, my friend. Permanent sales tax on that. We also had, and I'm going to have a little fun with you tonight, hopefully, and not be so tight about some of these issues. Permanent sales tax on oral hygiene products and on gas stoves. $6.9 million sales tax relief. Thank you, Joe Biden, for that. 3 months of summer, Freedom Summer Holidays. This is a sales tax holiday that the Speaker and I came up with last year, just spitballing in his office one day. We said, coming out of COVID, we need to do something that's big for the state of Florida. We call it Freedom Florida Holidays, and this year's been expanded to give us $229 million of 3 months of tax-free holidays on things that you would do in outdoor recreation, outdoor activities, concerts, all types of outdoor venues. We have 14 days, two 14-day disaster-free holidays in the state of Florida because we felt like we have hurricanes starting the 1st of June as the hurricane season through December, and we feel like that citizens, especially after, citizens of the state, especially after Hurricane Ian need opportunities to get disaster recovery. Back to school holidays, $160 million for 2 weeks of those. We have a skilled worker holiday, a holiday I came up with last year to say that if we're going to put people back to work, they need to be able to buy tools and afford tools and other things. So we have skilled workers holidays where you can actually buy tools and books and other things for your apprentice programs at a reduced rate. Also extend the current tax exemptions on Energy Star appliances. So if you're building a home or upgrading your home or putting in new appliances, any Energy Star appliances, you can get a tax break on those up to $1,500 for refrigerators and other items, get up to $4,500 on some additional Energy Star items. A 2-year exemption on natural gas, permanent sales tax exemption on firearms and firearm safety and storage devices. So we felt like as a Freedom Florida state and a Second Amendment state, we need to be doing more there. So we want to give an opportunity for citizens to buy things that they can store their firearms and their firearms safely in. That includes locks and cases and trigger locks and safes. Reduction in the business sales tax holiday. That was an extension of a package we passed last year so that we reduced the sales tax exemption on lease on buildings. And that total is about $256 million, and we're reducing that number from 5.5 to 4.5. And I realize you may not catch a lot of this, I'm going pretty fast, but certainly ask me about it or call our office if you have questions on any of those issues from a business perspective. And the various other sales tax holidays is part of what we know as the framework for Freedom Florida. And that was a package that was passed on with the governor and the legislature this year. We have some general reserves that we put some money back for, but I want to talk about half a dozen things here, one of those being education. Under the leadership of the legislature in Florida, we're considered the #1 state for education. We are ranked #1 in education throughout the nation, especially in higher education. And so that framework for Freedom Florida is protecting parents in their fundamental rights to provide high-quality education choices to all their kids and through all students through reinvigorating higher education and K-12 needs. I've said often that you can't buy your way out of poverty, but you can educate your way out of poverty. And I really believe that. So it's very true for us in the state of Florida to make sure we're doing the right things to give every family and every child the best opportunity for education with school choice and other opportunities throughout the state. Quite a bit of money put in those. I won't bore you with those dollars, but there's a lot of dollars there. Additionally, we put in additional school safety components. We know that after the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shootings, the Parkland shootings, that we put in quite a bit of, I'm sorry that Rick's not here tonight, we put quite a bit of school safety standards in. And so we improved that and added to that this year. Phil certainly is applicable to you at the school board, but put $250 million into the safe school components for FEFP. We put in another $160 million for mental health allocation counseling, $5.5 million in mental health awareness training. It goes on and on and on. One thing I want to mention, and I'll get to the permanent carry bill a little bit later, but part of that permanent carry bill, we put in additional funding for school safety in that package as an addition of $15 million into House Bill 543, which I was involved in as a co-sponsor and picked the sponsor for the bill, for the Office of Safe Schools to implement safe school technology programs. So there's systems that will be implemented in schools in the next year that will provide more safety for our schools and our children. And $42 million also from that bill for school hardening grants to harden our schools even more. We also put in programs for literacy initiatives to improve reading. You know, it's well said and well documented that if your child is on reading par at the 3rd grade, you have a great opportunity for success in graduation, and that promotes them through life learning. It gives them a good leg up to be in a good position to have a good job later on. But if you're below reading levels at 3rd grade and you never catch up, you spend your entire education career sitting fallacy nodding, trying to catch up to get a student to graduate. And so some of the standards are, we are wanting to improve our graduation rates, but we don't want to improve our graduation rates only to pull a kid across the stage for graduation with no life skills that will help them. So that's very important for the Literacy Reading Initiative. We felt very strong about civic engagement in civics classes. So we put civics classes back in K through 12 to make sure students have the understanding of true history in the nation, and that they understand what's important in civics education throughout the state of Florida. And I think you'll see that the governor's initiatives and the Speaker Renner and President Pasatema's initiatives, they're very engaged to make sure that we hold on to our conservative values of faith, family, country, God, and country. So you'll see that all throughout the legislature this year. We enhanced teacher recruitment by $10 million this year, additional recruitment to make sure we're bringing the best and brightest to our state for teachers. We improved some levels of higher education, some funding for state colleges and for colleges like St. John's. We also added to the framework of freedom for bright futures. So students that want to go to college, that have the need and opportunity for bright futures, we're help funding those opportunities for those students. We put in additional dollars for, as I said earlier, for workforce initiatives, workforce training, up to $6 billion for workforce education. And so not all students are college bound. Many students would do better by going into a career tech education program or technical training program, and often make just as much as or more than they'll be the entrepreneurs and the business owners of the future. So we feel strongly about that. We feel like there's probably 500,000 jobs out there right now waiting for people in Florida for technical opportunities. And then I want to go into a little bit of what we did environmentally. So I'll back up a little bit and tell you that what my role was in the legislature this year. I had an opportunity to fulfill a lot of different roles, but the speaker tapped me and has tapped me over the years to be engaged in water policy. So I ran a Clean Waterways Bill in 2020. It's been a basic kind of groundbreaking water piece that's been captured and used for years, and it was really a water piece that took all the state of Florida water issues and brought them to a head to build the basic building blocks we need to go forward. So that was one piece. He engaged me with the Department of Transportation to make sure we have transportation opportunities and improvements throughout the state. John is very aware of what those are, and we added, so the state transportation budget, somewhere around $12 billion. We added $4 billion to that this year. we call it a moonshot, to improve and enhance the transportation areas throughout the state. We saw those fall woefully short during some of the storms where people had a difficult time evacuating. And so with the influx of people, the challenge is with the influx of people coming to Florida, 800 to 1,000 people a day, how do you keep up with balance of water and infrastructure? And the last piece the speaker gave me was ag. So ag and citrus. So those are all different balls to juggle to try to find a balance of growth and development, new housing, maintaining water quality, water quantity and supply, and then make sure we hold on to our farmlands as much as possible. So I'll tell you a little bit more about those as we move forward. I think the environmental side, and I just read a letter, and I was with the Secretary of DEP yesterday in Orlando, but I just read some of the things he did that he put out for us at the end of 2022. You'll see similar things come out from the Secretary that we've done in 2023 as well. So let me run just through a few of those. We put $7.2 billion in funding to protect the environment this year in Florida. We all know and love the environment in Florida. We ruin the environment, we ruin our habitat, we ruin our opportunities in the state of Florida. So it's essential that we keep funding environmental needs. It used to be that we thought loving the environment was just a Democrat thing. We all love the environment. So the Republicans have taken that message and said with the governor, we're going to maintain our environment, improve our environment, look at water issues, the water issues that we saw 6 or 7 years ago. Some of the implementation of some of our policies are starting to work now. $7.2 billion in environment, agriculture, and natural resources, and that includes 3.8 specifically through DEP, Florida Department of the Environment, 3.8 billion to DEP. Locally, we have 20 million dedicated to the St. Johns River, Tim. I know that was an issue for you through St. Johns River Water Management District. A lot of funding is still going into the Everglades area, the EAA, and restoration of the Everglades so the water moves south from the Everglades from mistakes we've made in the past. We've raised the Tamiami Trail so water can flow south through there. But the amount of funding is really quite startling. $200 million for expanded water quality improvements and grant programs, $100 million for the Indian River Lagoon, $40 million to accelerate projects for scientific nutrient reduction goals, $398 million for local water quality issues, and some of those I'll talk about when I talk about Putnam County in just a minute. $20 million for critical infrastructure needs for water and stormwater, $25 million for water quality improvements in the Caloosahatchee watershed, and $13 million in the center part of the state for Lake Apopka and other wetland areas. So when people ask me why aren't we doing more for the environment, and what I'd like to say is that our resources often get limited, but the dollars that we're putting in the environment now are astronomical. In some cases, tenfold. What we put in last year matched the last 12 years of improvements in water quality and in the environment. So we're working hard on that, but that's not an issue that turns around overnight. It's just like education. You have to put down the basic building blocks and the efforts from funding and start building those policies and those projects to see the reap the benefits in later part of your life, or what later part of the legislative life. We put in money for our coastlines. Coastlines were devastated last year. Many of you have made a trip to Southwest Florida. You saw how bad it was torn up from Hurricane Ian. And as it came across the state, it flooded Orlando. We saw the effect of that for 2 or 3 months in the St. Johns River. Water was staged up for months and months. I drove through Orlando probably 2 months after Hurricane Ian, and I was shocked there was water still that close to the interstate in some areas. We put in restoration for some coral reefs in South Florida. And then the other commitment we had was $1 billion into commitment for Florida prized properties and waterways. So the St. Johns River will be included in that, as well as streams, estuaries, lakes, and springs. We put $850 million into wildlife corridors. Wildlife corridors are corridors throughout the Florida where our wildlife, native natural wildlife, freely roam. So we have scientific data from a lot of institutions we actually believe on the data of maybe say a bear or a panther. One of the wildlife photographers for National Geographic is a guy named Carlton Ward. Carlton Ward, with a few other folks, brought this to the attention of the legislature 3 years ago. We had private funding of over $1 billion to put in these wildlife corridors. And what it does for our farmers and ranchers, it allows them to maintain their area of conservation that won't grow, because we don't want growth in some areas that we shouldn't have growth. That affects water bodies, it affects natural pathways for some of our wildlife. So we're trying to preserve as much of that pristine wildlife as we can. So there's wildlife corridors that actually run all through Florida, all the way up into Georgia and Alabama into the Panhandle. And we're trying to preserve those to make sure we don't spoil the Florida as we know it. And so in 20 or 30 years, we know growth will slow eventually, but we want to maintain those pristine areas where we should actually keep old Florida, native Florida. And so I often refer to a book, A Land Remembered. If you've ever read that book, that describes the feeling of what Florida was 100 years ago. Some of that we want to preserve naturally. We're going to have growth and population growth in the state of Florida like we have now. But at some point in time, we're at 22 million people. It'll be too expensive and too cumbersome and too dense for people to come. And that's why I'm glad I live in Northeast Florida and not Miami. I mentioned the transportation space earlier. Again, we added $4 billion to the transportation space. And so I met with the transportation secretary. He's usually in the office every week, as well as Secretary of DEP. Jerry Perdue is a great guy. John knows him very well. John Browning knows him very well. But he told me, he said, Bobby, we could spend $30 million in the state of Florida and get where we need to get. I said, guess what? You're not getting $30 million. So I said, what do you need? And so we put together enough to give him an opportunity to make some big differences in areas like over on Interstate 75 to south of Ocala. If you've been driving up through there with the turnpike and Interstate Connect, you always think there's a wreck because traffic just stops. And what he said for years is, look, we go around the state and we do triage of areas because we don't have enough funding to fix this major problem, but we can fix 5 problems at $2 billion each. But we can't fix a problem that's $6 billion by itself because we're leaving the rest of the state out. We've given the funding to help get that done in the next several years. So we'll improve transportation throughout the state. And that includes money in for repaving projects like we need desperately in certain areas, and certainly in Putnam County. Anybody's driven down St. John's Avenue lately knows that. Some of these I'm going to skip over. I mean, I will tell you that in the 7 years I've been in the legislature, we've gotten the most done this year of any year I've been there. So naturally, I put together a book like this so that I can have reference material. Of the 3,000 bills we hear each year, we pass maybe 200. It's hard to keep track of all this, and some of those run year after year after year. The other thing I want to say, Tim, you might look at this book at some point in time. I commissioned FDEP this year to create what is known as another Florida Water Atlas. This book is 25 years old. That's the last time this book was updated. So I put $250,000 into commissioning FDEP to give us an updated water atlas that pinpoints all throughout the state the water issues and the water bodies that are impaired in the science, not the subjectivity, but the science that goes into understanding water throughout the state. So if you want to take a look at this, please do. This edition was written 25 years ago, and I'm going to ask somebody if they remember who the governor was at the time. Anybody want to take a shot? I hear Lawton Childs. There you go, Lawton Childs was the. So Lawton Childs did that. I think it would be very good to do that book again this year and put Governor Sands' picture in there. A couple other bills. Within the framework of Freedom Florida, we put additional money into public safety. And look, we're all well aware of the federal policies that have created problems for us. But we put $20.7 million into combating fentanyl in the state of Florida. We put $20 million into law enforcement recruitment and retention. We put $110 million in the First Responders Recognition Payment Program. Our first responders need to be recognized and rewarded for what they do. We enhanced correctional officers' staffing and their pay. If you weren't aware, the correctional officers, and so before I had District 20, which you mentioned earlier, I had Bradford and Union County. I had 5 correctional institutes. They were so understaffed. These poor guys are working 12, 16 hours a day and getting called in on a day off. They had no time with their families. So we improved their pay. They've got a tough job. In some cases, one guard's watching 96 different prisoners. So we improved their opportunities. They've been overlooked for years. So we increased their salary. And then, where's the one I was looking for you, Alex? Enhanced law enforcement safety by $2 million for the FDLE. And Scotty put $72 million into dedicating grant funding to support our local government firefighters. Military is one I was extremely excited about. We continue expansion of the Florida State Guard. I went to the first graduation of the Florida State Guard last week in Camp Landing. It's a state guard that enhances our needs throughout the state with National Guard. Our National Guard is short for recruits, and we often deploy our National Guard to other states. So our state guard is there to protect us during times of disasters and emergencies. So that first class graduated last week, and I'm proud to say that one of my colleagues from the House of Representatives, a graduate, he said, I'm doing this. They went through a 30-day boot camp. The guy lost 20 pounds, and I told him he needed to keep doing that because he looked really good. But he's excited about the opportunity to do it. And the other thing we did was Camp Landing. If you don't know the story about Camp Landing and the history of Camp Landing, you should look it up at some point in time. I can tell you on a personal level, that's where I learned how to swim when my father was a colonel in the Guard and was teaching officers cadet school there at Camp Landing. And so we went back this year to visit the old officer club, but we put $102.5 million into strengthening the National Guard Camp Landing complex, and that's in my district. So Rhonda and Scotty, I know you're very familiar with it, but I was excited about that opportunity, and it's time that we did that to help our guardsmen and our veterans. So now I want to talk just a minute about, and I'm going to give you time at the end, and like I said, I'm trying to get 3 hours into 35 minutes. But we'll talk about a couple of bills that I sponsored, and then we'll talk about how they manifested out through the process. I sponsored, Speaker and I started talking years ago. Again, Paul Renner is probably my best friend. We've lived together in Tallahassee, rented a house together for years, as well as another representative from Ormond Beach, Tom Leak. Now, since Paul has children, we clearly had to go because we couldn't put up with the screaming kids and brought Chuck Clemens in. So, but Paul's a great guy, a really good friend. He laughs every time I say that. He approached me a couple of years ago about taking the permit away for a concealed weapons permit, saying, we pushed back on some Second Amendment issues hard enough. We need to run a bill that says you don't need a permit to carry a gun in the state of Florida, concealed. So I asked Chuck Brandon. Chuck Brandon's a 30-year law enforcement officer from Columbia County. He's been in every type of situation you can imagine. Chuck ran the bill, and he caught a lot of grief over the bill from both sides. The extreme right said he didn't go far enough to give us open carry, which we couldn't get open carry approved through the Senate. And he went too far for the left, who said more guns just mean more kids get shot. Well, there's nothing you can do to stop a thief from stealing a gun, but you can give a citizen that's a law-abiding citizen a fighting opportunity if they can carry a concealed weapon, and they don't need a permit from the state to do that. Now, if you want a permit, which I have a permit for reciprocity reasons to take to other states, get your permit. I would encourage you to do that. But I also encourage you to make sure if you carry a gun that you know the laws and you know what happens if you ever have to use that gun. I'll remind you that in my freshman year, I passed the burden of proof and stand your ground, where I put the ownership back on the state to prove you were guilty if you ever had to use your gun in self-defense. It follows the council doctrine. It follows Heller versus the state. It follows Bruin versus the state in the northern part, whether it's PA or New York or New Jersey. So we implemented that bill this year. And those that can't carry or that are not able to carry are those people that, first of all, you got to be 21. You have to be a resident of the state. You can't be someone that's an illegal immigrant. You can't be someone that's been incarcerated for a felony in the last 3 years. You can't be someone that has been declared mentally unstable. So we've got a lot of exemptions in there to make sure that law-abiding citizens who should be able to carry, and I can't find those the exact sound bite. I want to read to you. Anyway, I'll get back to it in just a minute. To make sure that we were doing the right thing for those law-abiding citizens that wanted to personal carry. Someone asked me, why didn't we put in more training and education? And what I told them was this: it's your personal responsibility if you carry a gun to know the law, to know how to use that gun, and know how to protect yourself. If you have a gun and you're carrying it and you don't practice with it, or you don't use it and you don't understand how to use it, all we'd be doing is putting another barrier in for you to carry a gun to say you have to do the safety course before you carry a gun, and that's not what our Second Amendment might say. So we didn't do that. Let me move on and talk about a couple other bills I ran. I ran a bill, actually that was House Bill 543. I ran House Bill 1543, that actually changed the age of someone who wants to purchase a long gun from 21 to 18. It blew through the House, no problem. The Senate wouldn't take it up, so it didn't get past the Senate. And what I told members on the floor that day in debate and questions was that after the Parkland shootings, we put in 22 specific implementation mitigation points that have all worked in the state of Florida. Florida is the model for, and should be, for safe schools. Those work. But what we did is we took the constitutional freedoms and rights away from 18, 19, and 21 years old to say they can't go out and purchase a long gun to protect themselves or family, or for sporting, or to go hunting. That has to be gifted to them. And so we pushed that back to 18. Again, the Senate, it didn't get to the Senate, and we haven't given up on it yet. Additionally, I passed another law that was violence against violent offenses against attorneys. And so what happened in the state of Florida in Gainesville recently was that a defense attorney that was assigned to someone that was incarcerated was hit in the head, fractured his skull, knocked him out, and the assailant was in the courtroom when he did it, was caught later on in messages and questions and phone calls that, look, I had to do something to postpone my hearing so that I could just stay incarcerated in jail and not have to face the judge. And that individual got 30 additional years. So attorneys in courtrooms, and we have a judge on our House team that is also a veteran, and he presented the bill and did a tremendous job with that. So we're really proud to get that bill done. So anytime you're in a court of law where it should be civil and customary, you attack your defense attorney, you're going to get enhanced penalties. And finally, the last bill that I've gotten more questions on in the last 3 or 4 weeks that didn't pass was an opportunity for annual checkups by your insurance company for free for skin cancer. So I like to pass bills that make good common sense. In the state of Florida, well, in the nation, there's 5 cities that are primary areas for skin cancer, whether it's melanoma, basal cell, or melanoma. 4 of them in Florida. in the southeast. So where do people move to Florida when they retire? They move to Florida, and they get exposed to the sun. Insurance companies aren't granting the same opportunities there for an annual skin screening or a cancer screening for your skin like they would for a mammogram or a prostate exam or a colonoscopy. And we feel like in Florida it would be a natural fit. So we'll go after that again. Work with the dermatologist on those issues. Doesn't mean that you can't go get checked for skin cancer. I would ask you to do that. You should, but 1 out of 5 people that you know who have skin cancer, often somebody in your family or someone you know. And there's, I'm trying to remember, I think 2,000 deaths a day from melanoma in the nation. 97,000 people are diagnosed with melanoma every year in the U.S. So I feel like Florida is a good place for us to put a good common sense bill in that will require insurance companies to cover some skin cancer issues. What else? Those are the bills I ran. A few of the bills I want to talk about still before we wrap up, and I know I'm pressing time here, are again the school choice bill, universal school choice. I talked to you about that. I talked to you about, we know that there's problems with what is known as PBMs, pharmacy benefits managers, and those were initially put in place years ago to help reduce the cost of drugs. We put in some bills this year that would imply more transparency in drug changes, and they have to report those drug cost changes. So if any of you have ever changed insurance companies, you know if you've got prescriptions and you go from one insurance company to another, they may not cover your prescriptions. So we put in more transparency to try to cut that off. I talked to you about constitutional carry and public safety, and the biggest thing in that public safety bill that I thought was such a great win was the fact that we put enhancements in for school hardening of $42 million. We pushed back on tort issues this year. I think the state of Florida is the second leading state in the nation for litigation. And so we pushed back and say, look, if we've got people that are going out and suing over frivolous lawsuits, well, let me just read to you what we actually put in place on that. The legal system should ensure that anyone who suffered a loss is compensated quickly and fairly, but the hidden cost of lawsuit abuse is making the life of Florida families and businesses more difficult. Florida's legal system needs to be balanced. All good claims need to move forward, but all these bad claims should result in misconduct, accountability, and we have to take care of that. So we pushed back on that. The trial bar was not happy with us this year. The Morgans and Morgans of the world were not happy with us, but you know those guys have lined their pockets with billions and billions of dollars of taxpayers' money, and so we're going to push back on that and make them find a balance. And some of you may remember 2 years ago we passed a bill that I know you're hearing a lot about in the federal states now, transgender athletes. If you've read any of those, we passed that 2 years ago in the state of Florida that you will not, a transgender athlete cannot compete in high school athletic competitions against, if you're a guy and you're going through the transgender process, you can't compete against female athletes in the state. We're way ahead of the rest of the country on that. We passed additional housing needs this year for attainable and affordable housing and for workforce housing. It was an initiative of the Senate President. I think it was $850 million that went into that. We also passed a bill, and I won't get too much into the transgender discussion. Many of you may remember last year we talked about parental rights in education, where we had certain teachers indoctrinating our kids, K through 12 kids, but K through first grade, and telling them that you might not be a boy or you might not be a girl. That's a parental decision. That's a conversation a parent needs to have with a child. So we stopped that in the state of Florida. It was nicknamed Don't Say Gay Bill by an extremely liberal House member that is no longer in the House. And it caught national attention. But it was really to say, look, those discussions of sexuality should be between a parent and their child and not a teacher and a child. And indoctrinating our kids to believe anything else It's wrong. We also push back on puberty blocker drugs, on gender surgeries this year. None of those can happen until you're of age, a majority 18 years old. So we have, believe it or not, we have families in this country that, the best way I know to describe it is when a young person is pre-adolescence, pre-puberty, and they're often confused because their hormones are racing in their bodies. We're now going to adjust their bodies to make them fit their mental mold. That's not right. Let them outgrow it. Don't go do radical surgeries on our youth just so that they can fit the mental mold or whatever may be in vogue at that time for their belief. And we have doctors that are agreeing to that, and we have educational people that are agreeing to that. So we say in the state of Florida, you don't make that decision until you're age of majority at 18. So we did that this year. The other thing we did, we passed a privacy bill. These are uncomfortable subjects for me, but I'm going to talk about them anyway. We passed a privacy bill for public restrooms. If you're a public restroom, we passed, and I'll read you exactly what we did. The Safety in Private Spaces Act ensures the safety of all Floridians by requiring the use of common decency standards in private spaces. House Bill 1521 promotes safety and privacy in private spaces, requiring certain public entities which maintain a restroom or a changing facility to have separately designated restrooms for both females and males. So there was a time where you could declare that you are, I could go out and say, I am a lady today, and I could go into a ladies' restroom. We were stopped that. That's crazy. So we believe in common sense, and that just doesn't fit our mold in Florida. And the last thing we did, well, not the last thing I want to talk about, perhaps based on time, I'll mention a couple others, is diversity, equity, inclusion. And so in the state of Florida, we went to our universities and said, if you're teaching diversity, equity, and inclusion in college, at college levels, and we've already outlawed it to K through 12 levels, but you're teaching at college levels, we're going to check on you. That should be part of your curriculum. People go to school to learn science, technology, engineering, math, or whatever their career tech will obviously give them. We're not going to let you go, and we're not going to fund your colleges to teach diversity, equity, and inclusion issues in the state of Florida. So that was one of the things that we went through this year. What else do I have? So as I sat down and spent about 7 hours going through this the last 2 days so I could talk to you tonight. So we've accomplished so much, it's hard to cover it all. I think the last thing that I'll talk about is a little bit about data privacy. We passed a data privacy bill this year that says if you're a mom and your kid's enrolled in any type of program where your data can be taken as a child, and that data, they're telling once it gets out in the internet world, can be given to anyone, we're protecting that data privacy. I think the last thing we know is that based on federal decision, federal reports, China's stealing your data, and they're using that data. And ironically, if any of you have, you have one of those sound devices that you talk to at home or listen to, what are they called? Yeah. That thing will hear you talking, and the next thing in 5 minutes, you'll have an ad on your phone. How does that happen? It's crazy. So someone's stealing our data, and so we know people are using that as a marketing tool. And if you go in and search for something online, the next day you'll have a whole bunch of things in your page of those that want to sell that information to. So the world that Al Gore said he created has created problems for us as well. I'll stop right there and take some questions. I did want to cover broadband. I didn't hit that too hard. I said I'll talk about it. I wanted you to know that I spoke to a couple of broadband providers today, and they're working hard. Putnam County will receive $9,245,224.20 in broadband initiatives this year. They're deploying their resources as fast as they can, and that will include these areas. We'll get to them. Putnam County, $1.6 million to cover 65 miles of fiber optics. City of Bostwick and Barden, not city, but town of area of Bostwick and Barden, over $3 million all the way to Floor Home for 68 miles, 441 unserved locations. Same in Floor Home, 42 miles, 1.725 million. Edgar and Floor Home and Whiteville and Georgetown, 1.5 million. There's another 1.375 million for them, and then there's some between Clay County and Putnam County, some additional funding. So there's about $10 million coming to Putnam County for broadband access. We know it's so important for education, for business opportunities, and for telemarketing, as well as telemedicine. So that's exciting. Wayne, I knew that was an issue that you and I have talked about for 3 or 4 years, and so it will certainly affect businesses. So I'll stop there, let you ask questions. You need to leave. If I've gone too long, just let me know. But thank you for being here tonight. It's a pleasure to have my presentation. Thank you. Questions?
Putnam County, you didn't talk about Putnam County and appropriations.
Okay, thank you, Leota. So Leota used to work for me, and I know she's really good at setting me straight and things I forget about. So, let me find those appropriations. I'm glad thank you for mentioning that. I will tell you that we have 2 people in our delegation, Senator Hudson and myself, but we have a 3-legged stool in Clay County of Senator Bradley and Representative Garrison, who will be our speaker. It's a pleasure to work with them. Senator Perry's been very supportive as well. Let me run through Putnam County appropriations real quick. And I put in for 35 appropriations this year, which is quite a few. I usually put in quite a few appropriations. We received 25 of those back fully funded. City of Palatka received $7 million for portable water main line replacements. I've been working on that for 4 years. And like I said, if you've driven down St. John's Avenue, you've seen where we've torn up the roads to put in new infrastructure. Those pipes have been in the ground for 100 years, and so we're replacing them. Another $5 million for sewer main and manhole improvements. Crescent City received $1.75 million for their Prospect Street main water replacement. Crescent City also received $450,000 for South Main Street main replacement project. City of Palatka received $2 million for workforce housing. Ride Solutions, which has been a need in rural communities forever to get people to hospitals, received $2.1 million. Putnam County received $500,000 for an animal shelter, and they have matching money to put the animal shelter in place for us. Putnam County firefighters received $1.9 million for a new facility and training. The Arc of Putnam received $3 million. That's something that's very close to me, for their pool facility and enhanced facilities for the Arc. If you didn't know, we host a lot of the swimming meets at the Arc, because that's the only recreational pool in the area. And if you go over there on a Saturday to the swim meet, the place is so packed that it's unsafe. So we're going to expand that area, and glad to work with Melissa Miller on that. Additionally, Putnam County School District received $2.34 million, Phil, for the South Putnam enhancement of the core activation of rural county career opportunities that we spoke so much about earlier. We put in some funding in St. John's for a variety of mental health support. Let's see what else. Putnam County Fairgrounds, $1.5 million. That's the one you're nodding for, Leona. So that number of the district, I actually say that worked out very well for the district. A lot of what Putnam County was a benefactor of was about $64 million. That doesn't include some of the road work. We've got road work. If you've been down 17 lately, you've seen Highway 17's been repaid. Yes, sir, Phil? You have a question?
Excuse me, the $6+ million for the new high school in Crescent City, which we're one of only 3 counties.
Yeah, that's on here somewhere.
Yeah, to
This is like a number 2 font. My eyes don't go below number 4. So I have to tell you that I sponsored some other bills that were very important to farmers in some other areas. I won't talk much about those, but it's been a very rewarding year. I will say that I've been blessed to have Speaker is one of my best friends. The Appropriations Chair is one of my best friends. It's always good to have a seat at the leadership table. I've been on the leadership team now for 4 years, and you know, when the money's delved out and there's a little bit left over, they come back to the leadership team and say, what do you need? So it's been rewarding to be able to do that. Other questions? Yes, sir, Wayne?
Yeah, thank you, Bobby. Thank you, first of all, for all you've done for Putnam County. It's been a long time since we've had a representative take care of Putnam County. And thank you especially in Leota for your leadership in broadband. It's appreciated. My question is, what's next for Representative Payne?
You got any good used car sales jobs down here?
I just would hate to see your leadership style, which is so refreshing, just stop after your term.
Thank you
I
for
would hope
that.
you consider other ideas.
Thank you for that. I'll tell you that redistricting changed a lot for me as far as a Senate run. I would tell you that I'll stay engaged in some method. It may not be an elected office, but there'll be some engagements. I think there'll be some opportunities going forward that will continue to help Putnam County in our district. I'm proud to say, and you'll have a chance to meet him, the guy I've shared the lease with, one of the guys I've shared the lease with in Tallahassee is a guy named Tom Leake. Tom Leake is maybe one of the most gifted legislators I've ever met. He is an attorney, he's brilliant, he represents businesses. He is the most even-keeled person you'll ever meet. I've never seen him get rattled. He was the redistricting chair for the state of Florida, as tough as that was. He was the appropriations chair for the House and will be next year. I have to say that I have an inside baseball knowledge of him, and it works to our favor in Putnam County. So he's going to run for Senate for this area, and I think we'd be well served by him. So I'll put a plug in for him because I told him about speaking to y'all tonight. He said, I want to come as soon as I can. So he's just a great guy. But Wayne, to answer your question, I don't really have an answer for that yet. But I want to stay engaged. I think it's important for our state and for our community to have people that are willing to serve. I believe this. I believe this on my heart. Is that we're put on earth for a couple of things. One is to serve mankind. And if you're not serving mankind and you're doing something that's self-indulging, something that's self-perpetuating, you're not following what God wants you to follow.
I think there's a few more questions for you.
Yeah, sure, Charles.
I know I've worked against you about the court, but I think you were the leader in that.
Yeah.
And I just heard recently, and hopefully it's not true, that Jan's bridge thing has been pushed back several years. So I just want to go with you and say how will that affect it? If it is true, how will that affect it? And what can we do to maybe pursue that? Because it does sound like that would be an opportunity for Putnam County.
Yeah. It's news to me, Charles, if that's true. I can tell you that I'll be talking to the Secretary this weekend. I was there when Governor Scott moved into the second phase. And so what Charles is talking about is that the inner beltway from I-10 to I-95 had the bridge raised. We've often said we're bottlenecked off from the north, from maritime industry traffic. I can tell you at Seminole Electric at one point in time, we wanted to bring pre-built structures in down the St. Johns River and offload them at the barge port. We couldn't do it because the height from the river to the bridge was 42 feet and it inhibited us from doing that. So raising that bridge would open up maritime industry for south of Green Cove, but I've not heard that. So John, have you heard anything on that? So you heard it was pushed off until, the money's there. So John, and we'll follow up tomorrow. I'll call Secretary Perdue this weekend and ask him what he knows. And if I hear different, I'll let you know. But certainly, it's not acceptable. Yep. Yeah. So let me just say, while John's speaking, I've been fortunate to have people like John to work with, who is very well connected in Tallahassee. John does a lot for our community behind the scenes that you never know about. And so he's got things going on. Wow. I'm sorry, John. Things going in Putnam County that you'll never hear about often on road and road construction and road development. We work together on trying to get a boat ramp in the area of the new bridge going south towards Dunn's Creek. Those are things that you don't hear about that we're still working on behind the scenes. So, thank you, John. Other questions?
How long are the insurance?
Yes, ma'am. So we talked about that earlier. Good to see you. Good now? Yeah. All right, good. Thank you. You look more like Jesus every day. Thank you, Paul. So we passed a special session last year. We know that insurance in the state of Florida, and I'm sorry to keep you, I'm trying to wrap up. Insurance in the state of Florida has been a problem in increasing insurance costs throughout the state. In 2022, we had a special session to deal with insurance, and we said those reforms will take 12 to 18 months to take place. We knew that wasn't enough. We went back for another special session early in committee weeks this year and passed additional concessions to try to drive insurance costs down. But what's important about insurance is to bring competition back to the state. Competition drives pricing down. We've got to bring pricing back to the state. Citizens insurance is the state insurance, the government insurance. It should be the last insurance of choice. Citizens was signing up 5,000 people a week at one point in time. And that insurance is not acceptable. It should be a competitively bid insurance pricing that will drive those prices down. So we met again. Some things we worked on include enhanced tort reform, enhanced issues for roof problems. We still haven't gotten past. I'm hopeful that you'll see insurance prices start to make a downward turn. But you also have to remember, part of the equation that drives insurance prices up is the value that's assessed of your property. Values of property, as we've seen, have in some cases doubled and tripled. So when those values double and triple, the actuaries for the insurance groups have to look at what the value for replacement would be. Unfortunately, you don't get a lifetime replacement, as Mrs. Motes and I were speaking about earlier, if you've got an older home. And also, we have to make sure we have enhanced building standards so that roofs aren't damaged during non-named storms or named storms that significantly, that it drives the cost of everyone up. So some of you remember in 2004, we had several hurricanes that came through. State Farm was about to pull out of the state. We increased the opportunity for competition. We're still trying to bring some of that competition back to the state so we can drive pricing down. And that's part of the way we'll do it. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm just gonna make this fast.
Okay.
I think all about the lawmakers and everybody in our government, and what we do, all of us, and we mentioned a lot of things. Please keep things in mind. I see development.
Say it again.
Please keep things in mind that you're planning for our state. I see so much development in Putnam County, and the trees just coming down left and right. And it will cost the government and money require the trees to go back up in line in place.
Right. So I would just say on that, it's more of a local issue. It's more of a local ordinance issue on trees. I think we at the state level are concerned about big swatches of property, and I'll tell you that developers move into areas, they put down wells along the coastline, they clear property. There should be some local ordinances that say you have to replant. But what happened, for example, just in case, as an example, developers put down a well, they'll build a housing development. That well will be inundated with saltwater intrusion from the coast. They go in a half a mile and put another well down. So those are the things that at the broad level of the state we're looking at. But I understand what you're saying. We all love trees. And
I mean, there used to be orange groves all over South Florida.
yeah, and so you mentioned that. And so what happens is farmers and ranchers give up at some point in time. Things like citrus screening and freezes have hurt citrus growers. That's part of the that bailiwick I have. We're looking at citrus screening opportunities and interventions. But you're right, you used to see orange groves and grapefruit trees all the way down the I-95 corridor. You're not seeing it anymore. So. Thank you for that comment. Yes, ma'am. Okay, good. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rep. Payne. We so appreciate you. I agree with Wayne McLean wholeheartedly. You've been a blessing, and you'll be hard to replace the next election. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that we have a representative from Putnam County that we can hopefully that we can support. So. The next thing we're going to do is a new thing that we've been doing is featuring a member every month and giving a little highlight on a member. So Yoma's coming up and talk to you about our highlighted member of the month, Kate Long.
Okay, this is all about Kate Mom. She's been with us for most of this year. Her life started out with lovely Irish Catholic parents, which informed her earliest development into the person she is today. She was one of 5 children, and they all attended parochial schools in South Bay area of San Francisco, where they lived, which would later become Silicon Valley. Her parents were both from upstate New York, and over the years, they would fly back to New York to see the parents, to see the family who was close to them. For the children, going there was akin to a Disneyland thrill, as there was so much love and care and interesting places to visit of historic and cultural value. From those experiences, she developed a travel bug to see new sights and cultures. In high school, a friend conceived a plan to travel to Europe. Wow, high school? They focused on graduating early, which allowed them time to work, earning enough money to fund the entire trip. They traveled to multiple countries and 9 months, beginning in Ireland. Coming off such a fantastic year, they made another plan to tour New England in the fall on bicycles. And this was before lightweight biking materials. And they did a grand loop in 8 weeks. Since the age of 12, she was always doing jobs to earn money, regularly babysitting, then working at a florist. And after her travel spell, she continued working and began college with studies in French and art history. She found a job at an art gallery where she met her husband, and she was 22 at the time. They married a year later, and this year they celebrate 45 years together. That's something, 45 years. They brought up 2 beloved sons, and starting their family life in the same Bay Area, then moved to Monterey, which I know pretty well. It's a beautiful area. And later to the Central Valley to be closer to their siblings and families. Plus, her parents migrated there too. As a family, they enjoyed beachcombing, hikes in the redwoods, camping, and were active in their church. At some point, with her son's interest in Japanese culture, they tried training in traditional karate. They started with 2 nights a week and became hooked, then joined a Saturday session as well. By 5 years, they earned their black belts. Their children were in school, and she returned to college, this time for a business degree in accounting. Upon graduation, she worked at the Monterey Bay Aquarium in finance. Later, attracted to Coast Accounting, she worked mostly for food manufacturing plants and enjoyed the multidisciplinary attributes of each department and delighted in the way they all came together to produce a product for the marketplace. Her best contributions would happen after an introduction to a database design in the master's program, which she pursued after 10 years into her work life. Her specialty was the ability to combine data from unrelated subsystems to tell an integrated story of spending and its effect on the bottom line. In the Central Valley, her siblings cared for her parents in their old age, and her widowed mom lived with her for 6 years and then passed away at her home. She also became grandparents of 4 children. Her husband, working at home, was able to spend many hours during the work week with their grandchildren. Their home was the center of many family gatherings. It would be her husband who signaled to move to Florida. For some time, his friend from the Bay Area days encouraged them to relocate to Florida, where he lived in Stewart. They started looking there and they loved it, but they quickly found Stewart was experiencing high density growth like California, which they shunned. They found a house at Christmas in 2018 in the Lake Como area, surrounded by nature. They have a level of fulfillment unknown before. They love the beauty and quiet of Putnam. Immediately, they were thrilled by the incredible wildlife and natural diversity of the area. In California, they would have traveled to Big Sur or Yosemite to see the kind of wildlife you see right here in your backyard, such as American bald eagle. She loves the changing weather, the butterflies, larvae, exquisite colorful spiders, beautiful beetles, colorful snakes, bird life, and deer, plus ever-changing wildflowers at close hand. Then when they moved into their house, they had to relearn gardening for Florida and accused the U of F extension website, accessed the U of Florida extension website and books. They started with gardening for pollinators, which then led to gardening with native plants. 2 years later, they purchased an avocado tree, which then led to gardening with native plants. 2 years later, they started a new interest in Florida food forestry, or permaculture, learning about the multiple layers of plant life that generate soil quality and microclimates. That is symbolic to wildlife and sustains plant life cycles, and that's fascinating to her. She's learning from a younger age group who are generous-hearted for their information, sharing, and who are testing new methods of reintroducing ancient ones. Engaging in this cycle of life makes for an inspiring time in their lives, and she credits the beauty of this unique state and people here for making it so. Kate, Mom, stand up.
Turn over, and Bob's going to take a picture of you guys together.
Thank you so much. So Kate's bio is going to go on our next newsletter, and so please look for that. And when we tap you to please let us tell your story in the coming months, please say yes. What we're going to do is we do have a hard stop at 8 o'clock. These doors get locked and we have to be out of here and have things cleaned up and ready to go. So I'm going to kind of deviate a little bit. The minutes to our board meeting that we would normally read now in our treasurer report, we will send out an email to our members. So please look for that in a special email coming out. I want to go to a couple of other things quickly. Please know that we have the Vote Republican signs. If you'll see the signs here, we do have those available. If you'd like one or two or three, please pick them up on your way out. A donation would be nice to put in the box so that you can take that home and have it ready in your yard. So when we launch the upcoming election cycle, you'll be ready for that. Know that we are also talking about the first debates are coming up in August. And so we're talking at the board level about having some sort of debate watch. And so look for an email coming out from us about that as well. We do have these golf shirts. If you don't have a golf shirt, we do have only 3 left here tonight, 2 extra larges and 1 2X. We have some more on order, so if you're wanting a golf shirt, please see one of us to order your golf shirt, and they're $25, and we make sure that you'll get one. We do have some Republican Club stickers. Some of them are on the tables. I put mine on the bumper of my car. If you'd like to take one, if there's not one on your table, if you'll come up here, there's also some up here on this table. You could take one from up there. We were at the 4th of July festivities in Interlochen. It was a beautiful evening. If you weren't there, we had a lot of great times. Our next event is everyone's having a garage sale in Pomona Park. Yard sale. David, what's the date? The first Saturday of November. So if you've not been to that, it's miles of yard sale vendors, thousands of vendors. We've always had a great turnout. We've had a booth there, and we talk to people. We have them sign up for a newsletter. We talk to them about joining the club. We have applications available, so that's great. Update on our membership. I think we signed up 3 new members tonight. Those 3 new members bring us to 162 members now of the club. So that's really great. Thank you. Especially in the off cycle, we feel like it will just grow from here. And as we get going into the election year, we'll have even more members joining us and helping us in spreading the word. One of the things that we're trying to do is to reach the NPAs. So one of the things we're going to do is, I see Charles nodding his head back in the back. So we're going to have Charles at an upcoming meeting. We're going to tap him to come talk with us. But what we find here in Putnam County is while we have more registered Republicans than Democrats, the issue is those NPAs. And those NPAs, if they team up on the Dem side, we're going to lose. So what we want to do is make sure that we reach them and make sure that they understand that coming up in this primary, in the PPP, they can't vote. And if you talk to those NPAs, they don't realize that. A number of them, you think they would know, they don't know. They don't know that they have to be a Democrat or a Republican to vote. So we are working on a plan. I had worked with Duval County. I worked with them on their last election. I think, Rhonda, you were involved in some of that as well. And so they have a great team up there. And so we're working on some materials that we can jointly use to distribute to our NPAs and talk to them about joining the Republican Party, even if it's just for the presidential primary. So talk it up to your neighbors, find out if they're NPAs, and then encourage them to flip. They can always go back, I guess, if they so chose. But one of the other things I want to tell you is I want to thank you to the Sheriff's Office. If you haven't seen this is a handout. I know Rep. Payne gave out a lot of information quickly about the new law for the gun law. So this is sort of like a summary. So if you didn't take a lot of copious notes, please take one of these and have them to read over and refresh your memory, or to learn what the bill is about. Take heed from and call Alex if you have any questions. He'll answer.
Don't call me from the jail. Call me before.
All right, we're gonna have our 50-50 round here in a minute, so if you don't have your tickets, or you might wanna get them, or if you at least get the tickets out. Our next board meeting is August the 4th, it'll be in here. Our next monthly meeting is August the 11th, next month. And so, Yomi, you wanna come up and talk about our upcoming speakers, so that people will know who we have here in the next few months.
Yes, the upcoming speakers. We just had one in Payne. In August, we are going to be hosting Congressman Waltz. That's really good. And in September, we have Tim Parker, and he's our property appraiser. And really, when we get to October and November, once again, Charles Overturf slipped out of my grip. Once again, he's so good at that. So we'll be looking for some speakers then. And I also wanted to say that they've chosen the theme for the Putnam County Fair. It's Country Pride County-wide. They'll be making up a little bit for that.
And we're gonna take a lesson, I think, from our Clay County friends. They got sponsors for their booth at the fair. We have not done that. You guys, how much did you get in sponsorship, do you mind me asking? $7,000 to put their booth together. So that was impressive when we were up there and we saw your list of sponsors. So it's like, we might be doing that as well. So, all right, everyone have their tickets out? Are we ready to move forward? If so, we're going to adjourn the meeting for tonight. Thank you so much for coming. We look forward to seeing you back here next month to hear Congressman Waltz speak with us. So thank you all so very, very much. All right, you ready to go? Who's going to draw? Let's let Bobby Payne draw. Bobby, will you draw a ticket for us?